If somebody watched it and said this really isn't sport, then I'd say there's something wrong with them. When you're dealt the cards that are life-changing, you know, you have two choices: either to roll with it or turn to drugs, alcohol, whatever you want to do to drown your sorrows, but it doesn't get better.
I grew up in Virginia, and from there, graduated from high school, drafted into the Army, went to Vietnam, and was injured in Vietnam. And I was so scared to death that my mom and dad would no longer love me because I'd be in a wheelchair, and I'd lost both legs.
Got the worst ship in halftime.
I was injured in a car accident in May of '86, 3 days before my high school graduation, so I was 18.
Well, I was born in '65. I had a blood clot. At 9 months old, I lost my legs.
Enters for Northwestern.
After my 8th grade year, I had my accident, which was in 1997, July 11th. I wrecked a bicycle with a couple of my friends riding through the woods. Flipped over, blacked out, so I kind of don't know what happened to this day. Guess I kind of landed wrong. So that was my whole beginning to being a paraplegic.
I played left field, pitcher, third base. I was all right. I had a chance to try out for the Red Sox, but I come down with polio before I had that chance.
During the summer, I was out at a nightclub, at a party or whatever, and got shot in the back. So then I wasn't able to go back to school to play football. And then soon after that, I kind of really got bored with school and I was depressed. Just really like, not gave up on life, but like gave up on sports. And then basketball came back into my life. This is what keeps me going for real, basketball, absolutely.
I was hired in August 1979 to start or develop the first therapeutic recreation program for the City of Charlottesville Parks and Recreation Department. So one of the first programs that I developed was a therapeutic recreation program in basketball for individuals with disabilities. So that was when I put an ad in, I think a community press release type thing of looking for a volunteer that would help develop a wheelchair basketball program.
I was in graduate school at the University of Virginia in August of 1979. I had just come to Charlottesville, and I saw an ad in the paper asking for volunteers for the therapeutic recreation program. So I answered the ad, and I met Mildred Spicer. I told Mildred that I didn't know anything about people with disabilities, but I knew a bit about basketball, and I'd be glad to help.
My response was, well, I know a lot about individuals with disabilities, but not very much about competitive basketball. So that was when the two of us started working together, and I think it was a pretty good team.
When I first began working with the program, we had a number of disabled individuals participating.
And what happened, we might have 20 individuals, and 1 or 2 of them would be in wheelchairs. So that was kind of difficult to play basketball when you have a few in wheelchairs and the majority not in wheelchair.
And so we decided to move the folks in the wheelchairs to one end of the gym and let them play at that end, and everyone else played at the opposite end. And so I volunteered to go to the end of the gym with the folks in the wheelchairs, and that's where I met a fellow named David Baggett, who after a few weeks, when we had 6 folks down there in wheelchairs, said, you know what, we ought to form a team.
I moved down here in 1977, and about 3 years later, David Baggett got a hold of me and told me about the Charlottesville Cardinals wheelchair basketball team, and I've been with them ever since.
The challenge I ran into was finding gym space.
We realized pretty quickly, though, that there were times when the gyms were not open and not being used, and so what I was able to do was have a key to what was then called the Downtown Recreation Center. So on Sundays, when the gym was closed, we were able to go in with the wheelchair basketball team and practice. And the city allowed us to store equipment back in the back of the facility, which originally had been the armory and had a little jail cell in the back. So we had all of our equipment stored back behind bars.
We decided, okay, how can we recruit more individuals with physical disabilities that would be eligible for wheelchair basketball? And that's when we started inviting some teams throughout Virginia to come to Charlottesville and put on a demonstration. Funding was somewhat of a problem, particularly when the program first started. It was a very, very small budget.
When the city started the therapeutic recreation program, it was basically Mildred Spicer's position and a budget of $500. She had almost nothing to get the program going. We wanted to name the team, and our players had a discussion about it and suggested a variety of names. No one could agree on a name, so we decided to have a vote. So we said, all right, everybody write your first choice down and then your second choice. And everyone did that, and we counted the ballots, and nobody's first choice really had a majority. And then we looked at everybody's second choice, and it was the Cardinals. So that's what we ended up naming the team, the Cardinals, and it ended up being everyone's second choice. Once we had the name of the team, we decided we needed a logo, so I talked to a friend of mine who was an artist. We wanted a cardinal who looked like he had been through some tough times, a little battered, but still going strong and still defiant. A fighter, we said, and so we got the drawing back, and that's exactly what we had. We had a cardinal with boxing gloves. So we talked again and said, well, this is a wheelchair basketball team, so we actually need the cardinal in a wheelchair and with a basketball. And so on the second try, we got the logo that we still use today.
After we had established the team and began playing a regular schedule and traveling around the state and into North Carolina and into Maryland to play established teams, we realized that the logistics of moving a wheelchair basketball team were a bit daunting. We hatched the idea that it would be really nice to have a bus that we could take everyone on at the same time. So Harry Bowen got the idea that maybe we should just buy a used bus from a junkyard, and that's exactly what we did.
We got a bus and put a ramp on it, traveled all over the place with it. Sometimes we made it back, sometimes we didn't.
We started renovating the bus. For one thing, we had to figure a way to get the players on board. In those days, hydraulic lift was out of the question, so our players actually built a ramp that allowed the players to go up the ramp and enter the bus from the back and get into it that way. After we had painted the bus bright red and put our logo on it, the players dubbed it Ruby.
Traveling is an adventure sometimes.
The worst part of wheelchair basketball is the traveling part.
Okay, we're about to drive. This we hang, right? Okay. All right, let's go, people. No, this is just...
Usually, the first thing is us meeting here at the Independent Resource Center. This is usually base camp where we leave from. Sometimes we drive to these tournaments that we go to, and sometimes we fly to them. When I go through security, it's usually pretty quick. You know, they pat me down and they swab my chair to make sure I don't have any, you know, illegal fireworks or anything like that.
If we go through the little metal detector thing, it's gonna go off, so it's no point of us going through there. So what they do to us, they make us do a whole nother loop and dance.
But Tracy